I hopped off the stage and they said, no, I jumped it. So all it was the foot was held onto the leg by skin, muscle, and a few tendons. So there's that one. Then the following year, 2015, we made it through Chinese New Year's parade. I got home, couldn't really breathe, ended up having a 4-way bypass. So I never knew that I had a heart attack, which is kind of funny. Remind me to tell you a little privately about punching a nurse. But, yeah, what can I say? And then the following year, just before Chinese, I had the Chinese New Year's curse, by the way, which is going to be March 2nd. Y'all are invited. It's here. It starts at 12 o'clock. It's the only parade of its kind in the valley. We grew from 4 entrants and maybe 50 people to last year about 35 entrants and 2,000 people. So it's a lot of fun. But so that year I spent 18 days in the Selma Hospital with a bacterial infection that ended up in a certain part of your body you don't like to talk about, with dead tissue, gangrenous tissue, blah, 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 blah. But so the last 2 years I've been fine. But now, questions? Yeah, you're all lined up.
The man's stomach, you were gonna tell us a story about the man's stomach. The statue's stomach.
Try that one more time.
The statue upstairs, you said
Oh.
about the stomach or tummy?
Yes, yes, yeah. Well, when we go up, I will tell you that one because you can count on him. You guys want to hear the funny story about Chief Winchester?
Yeah.
If some of you remember, he was a police chief for years, and he was a good old Southern boy. I mean, really, really, when you're talking. But so we had worked on his retirement with the police department, and so I said, Chief Winchester, I understand you used to have a policy about your police officers. He goes, where'd you hear that, little girl? And I said, oh, I had heard it from a couple of old members of the police department. And he said, well, what'd you hear? I said, I understood that when people got out of the academy or the training, that you would assign them night patrol in Chinatown. And they would be patrolling the area for a month or two. He said, yep, I did. And that if they survived being assigned to Chinatown at night, that he said, yeah, I could put them anywhere in Fresno and they would make it. And I thought, oh, that's just a lot of bonus, but thank you very much. So with the little man, we had actually found him in one of our buildings that I had gotten donated to us. We have 2 buildings that actually belong to Chinatown. One is if you're going to Chef Paul's, it's the one that has the balcony to it. And that was donated to us by the Wong Association. How many of you have been in the restaurant, the Downtown Club? Downtown. Have you guys been in the bar?
Yes.
You know that backdrop to the bar, that hand carving that goes along for about 20 feet, is from Chinatown. You'll see a small little plaque on the side that it was donated by Alan Liu to the Downtown Club, but was from a business here in Chinatown. So we had many wonderful things as far as businesses, churches. Right now, our one historic church, the Buddhist temple, is now going to be a what is it? Burmese
Yeah.
monastery.
Yes.
Yeah, they bought it because the younger folks within the temple decided they did not want to live in Chinatown anymore or have their main temple. That temple used to be a wood building that we have some photos of the original reverend, because my grandfather was part of the men's group that rebuilt it when it caught fire. It burnt down and they rebuilt it, and they built the outside with concrete. So now if it goes up, it'll go up like a chimney. But now, you had a question, yes?
Yes, about the African-American blacksmith. What years was he here? Are there any other sources on him besides newspapers?
We only have the one map that we have to get a copy of. There were 3 maps that were made by a group of Japanese American guys that taped pieces of paper together, and they went from about 1910, a little bit before 1910, to evacuation. And you could roll the thing out and it would cover almost all 17 blocks. We had our map taken by a graduate student, if any of you guys know him, that got his doctorate degree on our heritage, our information, and never returned the map. The other one that we do know that exists is over at the library. In the main library, well, we're trying to get a copy of it now so that we would have one here. But when you flip them over on the sheets, one of the first sheets has my grandfather's pool hall, and then it also has blacksmith's business where it was located. But it has, what the senior men did is they used like 5 colored pens. It's the only pens they had. So it's red, black, brown, yellow, and green. And so they would identify different community groups, like when they said one of the colors, okay, we're gonna go. One of the groups that they would say is Caucasian, but they meant the Germans from Volga, Russia. So when you keep turning over the sheets, and it goes with more businesses, by the time you get to the evacuation, it looks like there is confetti thrown across that one sheet. It really is quite something. But what they did is they identified from what they remembered, sort of like, where did you go on? That's what I'm hoping to be able to get a copy of the list so that people who actually grew up here can be able to identify, like Swan's Bakery, which everybody in the world would go to because they made these great donuts, or some of the other businesses before it's totally lost to history. So, so he had a business. The one way that I got, actually it's kind of funny, we'd look really different if it had worked, but Mr. Cashin, Ed Cashin, and his downtown developer, Tom Richards, who Tom is mad at me because of High Street Rail and did protest stuff, but anyway, he and Tom actually spent almost $500,000 in working to revitalize all 17 blocks. And that got stopped by the city of Fresno. And I had asked a couple people, oh gosh, he was a city manager up until he retired. Rudd, used to be with transportation. He said, oh, well, Ed just got tired and left. I said, but they had expended a lot of money with plans. He said, well, he didn't have a lot of support. I said he had support of the community because he met with all the religious groups, he met with community groups, businesses, and the reason that I had asked him if he would be part of that redevelopment for Chinatown is that I knew that his father had started in this area with property in Chinatown, and Ed acknowledges, that his father had property here.
He had a house of prostitution, actually.
On the Cashins,
Yes, they
on
did.
those ones. Another question, and then we could go up and you guys could have your munchies and,
Can you speak to the tension that existed between the Japanese and Chinese community? I have an account in 1901.
this man has files.
A group of Japanese businessmen and civic leaders meet at the Buddhist mission on Kern and F Streets. They implore the police chief, a man named Shaw, to shut down the Chinese gambling dens. They brought statistics to show that 5,000 Japanese migrant farm workers kind of
Which would have
lived
been
in
my
and around here,
grandfather.
and the gambling houses were bringing in $200,000 a month.
And that was, if you think about the time we're talking about is 19.
Oh, one, yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking a hell of a lot of money. So what you had down here, when people talk about how this area was used, it was used for storage, it was used for housing, it was used for illegal activity, for prostitution, for gambling, and maybe one or two other activities. But that's what a lot of these basements were used for. And a lot of the connecting tunnels were just used for that, either transporting goods, packages or people, from one building to another. But the tensions were probably very realistic, because as far as between the Japanese and Chinese community, the Chinese community was here first, and they had worked with some European builders to build actually some of these tunnels. There's an article that was in the Fresno Bee by a woman who was Scandinavian, and she said that her father, and she was older at the time when the interview took place, that her father was recruited by a Chinese merchant to help build some of the tunnels. So there was a lot of that going on. The other one is, not that the Japanese community wasn't involved in gambling, because as I said, that there were two types of houses of ill repute, for the Chinese men and for the Japanese men. And my grandfather also was with the sumo ring. How many of you knew that we had a sumo ring in Chinatown, in Fresno? Okay. It was great. We have some pictures of the sumo wrestlers that came from Japan. They used to do this thing called a money tree. And what they would do is they would take the money, tie it together, and then shoot it up. And so it'd be like a pom-pom going up, but it was really tall. My grandfather, and then I'll let you guys, breathing gets hard down here. My grandfather was, how should we say it more? Not this quite illegal guy type of stuff. So besides hitting the cribs and hitting the bars all the time, he thought that he could wrestle. He was a little guy, and when he took off his clothes, the only part of him that was tanned was his hands and his head. The rest of him was pure white, kind of like pale stuff. So they used to call him Little White. And when he put on the tournament items on it, he kind of faded off in the distance. But he would go in the ring, and he would be tossed on his butt right away by the professional sumo wrestlers that came from Japan. And even the local other folks could just pick him up and toss him out. They used his little gi as a handle. Pick it up, toss him out, he'd pick himself up. So him being a little, besides being an alcohol runner and a few other things, he gave his money to his friends. So he'd go into the ring, all covered, looking like a little muffin because he had been thrown out so often. And he would run like hell, apparently away from these guys, and they'd kind of go after him. And then he would wait till his friends gave him some sort of high sign that, yeah, they had put the bets against him. And then he'd stop dead, they'd pick him up and toss him out, right? And then he and his friends would collect the money that they won betting against him. So he was, he was an interesting soul. So, actually, when he sent for my grandmother, I do believe that they sent different pictures. Because if you look at his face, he was real Cro-Magnon. Oh, no, brow. And my grandmother was, she kind of looked Cro-Magnon with the brow. So I thought, Luckily, my father married into a family who were insane, but they looked like Hallmark, but they looked like Hallmark kitties. You know the pictures of the Hallmark kitties with the cheeks? That was my mom's family. Certifiably insane, but with cute little cheeks, So either a part of our family looks Cro-Magnon or the other part looks like the Hallmark kitties. But all the Hallmark kitties are, very quite mean. But so apparently that I do believe they sent two different pictures. But they're married. They had my father in 1913. And he grew up in Chinatown and went to the boarding school at the Temple and had all kinds of stories, graduated from Roosevelt. He was in a restaurant here in Chinatown with some friends. The guys had their Roosevelt Letterman jacket on, and on the news, the radio said that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. And so my dad's going on about, oh, that stupid asshole, and he's just on. He was a quiet person when I was growing up, but not apparently when he was younger. And so his friends had said, Fred, you gotta shut up, we have to get out of here. He goes, what do you mean, we're born here. And he said, look at the people in the restaurant, and they were all staring at them. So they hustled him out before he had the hell beat out of him. But my grandfather decided that he was going to spend the time after the notices went up saying that people were going to be evacuated at a certain date. My dad would pick him up near the Sangha River bottom, bring him to Chinatown, drop him off at the bars, and then he would go to West Side where they were doing some sharecropping. He'd come back, pick up my grandfather, rip-roaring drunk, and then take him back to the house. And so my grandfather did that until they were all put on the trains. They were at the Assembly Center, then they went to the trains, and they were gone to Pustin, Arizona. But for my mother's side, now you know where's why I'm not married, because nobody acts as a Baishakunin. A Baishakunin is someone who arranges marriages. So my parents' marriage was arranged. And I'll make this a quick story on this one. So my father, I asked my mom, I said, you never stood next to him? She goes, well, yes. I said, you never noticed you could see the top of his head? And she goes, well, yeah. So I had this tape when I was in college, and I asked them to do an interview, because I knew their marriage was arranged in Poston, Arizona. And I said, well, why did you like him? And she said, oh, he was a block captain, he was a snazzy dresser. This man is eating a piece of chocolate cake with those mustard-colored polyester pants that were popular at one time, a striped t-shirt, so he looked a large, demented Dennis the Menace. He's eating the chocolate cake, and I'm asking my mom, well, so he's a snazzy dresser, and she goes, well, yes. I said, okay. So I said, Daddy, and he goes, yeah. And I said, well, let me interview you. He goes, okay. So my mom's around the corner going, oh, Fred. And so I said, so did you have to marry Mom? What do you mean, have to marry? I said, no, don't even go there. No, I didn't ask that. If the marriage was arranged, did you have to go through with the arrangement? Because they didn't know each other. She was from San Diego, he was from up here. He goes, oh, she was okay. I said, so, because I said, you notice that she's like 4 inches taller? He goes, and very slim. So our family works very hard to go this direction after my parents got married. But, so I asked him, I said, so if you didn't want to get married to her, could you say no? He goes, yeah, I guess so. And I thought, So what made you decide to marry Mom? And I could hear my mother in the kitchen going, oh, Fred. So, of course, you know that their names were Fred and Sue, not their Japanese names, but their English names. So my dad looks at me, he looks at the tape, he looks at my mom and he says, she had big boobs and long legs. And I'm like, oh, I can't use this tape for class. I said, no, put that away. But, so that's where, and let's see, do we have any young people? Oh, how old are you, dear?
Me? I'm 40.
Oh, yeah, okay. And now there's gotta be somebody else who's younger, but, okay. A little, 18?
16.
16. Okay, plug your ears. My mom, before, when we would eat, you always stayed away from my grandmother, my father's mother, because she could hit you with hashis. And you'd end up like with a stripe across here and a clump of rice stuck on her head, because if you said something bad, she would hit you. So my father would go a little crazy. He used to take care of vegetables at the Otani department store, and my mom was a clerk there. But so we didn't know that she had the diabetes, but so she had these big rashes under her chest, which is not like, but, and I said, well, Daddy, I'm gonna need some money. I have to take Mom to Penny's to go buy some cotton bras. And he goes, why? I said, because the doctor said these polyester things are not good for her. He goes, how much do you want? I said, $10, would be good. And he's like, He goes, well, I'll tell you something here. He said, here, gets up, goes to the sewing machine, cuts a piece of string. Now this is, again, the man that I grew up and honored as my father. He said, look, Sue, open up your shirt, tie one around the string here, take it on the side, tie the other, and let them air. And I went, oh, God, no, Daddy. And my mom's going, oh, Fred. So then he says, wait, he was on a roll by then. He goes, here, take this wool cap. And she goes, why? He says, take them and tie them over your head and just put the cap over. You don't need to wear a bra, you just have the cap over it. I said, Daddy, give me the $10. We're going to go to Penny's. But that was my dad. So, okay, we need to go up. Here we go.